think you have to have branding first. Branding is the long-term game. I think that's where if you want to build, the Apple, the Nike, that level of brand, you have to start with branding. You have to start with brand strategy. I think it makes everything after it easier if you know, like, this is who we are, this is what we're doing, this is how we talk, this is who we speak to, this is why they buy things. It makes your marketing, your advertising, your copywriting, everything gets easier after that. It's a long-term game.
Welcome to the Head Smack Podcast, where we have candid conversations with misfits and mavericks, those not afraid to stand up and stand out, the dreamers and the doers, the ones who've stumbled, fumbled, and then soared. Here we delve into the inspiring journeys and pivotal aha moments that have shaped their worlds. And maybe through sharing their adventures, you'll get hit with a head smack that'll change your destiny. Hey, welcome to the Head Smack Podcast. So excited to have you come along for our adventure. I am excited to talk to Haley Shane. I've known Haley for quite a while. We've chatted back and forth, but we've never talked. And so it's great to get an opportunity to finally chat with her and learn a little bit more about her. Haley is a brand strategist, graphic designer, artist, and but that's not all she is. She's got a little bit of a secret. She is also the slayer of boring black brands. I messed that up. The slayer of boring brands. Haley, so good to have you on. And tell me a little bit about yourself for those that don't know you and your journey to becoming the slayer of boring brands. What was it like in the Shire, and what set you off on that adventure?
Yeah. I started, so I wanted to be an artist when I was a kid, but I grew up before YouTube and Skillshare and all of that stuff. So it's really hard to learn something just by yourself if you don't have anybody to teach you and show you and stuff like that. So I wasn't very good at it. I kind of ended up giving that up and just told myself, like, oh, I wasn't born with this skill, so I guess I don't have it. And then later on, I discovered this thing called Photoshop. And it was like, oh, well, if you can't draw, like on pencil paper draw, you just use this, then you can make digital art. And I was like, oh, cool, which is not at all what Photoshop is. Like, so I pirate it using LimeWire, so you can figure out how old I am based on that. So yeah, I end up pirating this software. And I use it, and I get really good at it. And what I don't realize is that Photoshop's actually an incredibly hard software to use. Like, the barrier to
learning it after all this. Yeah, after all this time, I am still learning Photoshop.
I still learn new stuff. I learned something new the other day. Like, yeah,
I think I only probably use maybe 10% of its capabilities.
Maybe 20 if I really push it. Like, if I really push it and I'm doing something crazy, I might. But yeah, it's nuts. But I kind of accidentally developed that skill. And I was a musician at the time. And if you asked me that was what I was going to do, that was my career path. It ended up not being. But I used graphic design sort of as a supplement for it, because you have to design flyers and album covers and stuff like that. So it's this thing that I knew how to do. And we didn't have to hire somebody for it because we were in a band, you're broke, and you don't have any money. So I kind of looked at it like that.
What kind of a band was it? What kind of a band was this going to be?
I was in several, to be fair. I was in several. Usually always like hard rock metal, like in that genre. It was in a cover band. We played literally anything. Like, we played Taylor Swift covers. We played like stuff from the 80s. We did like a Paula Abdul cover where we sped it up and made it super aggressive. We would play anything. We didn't care.
And so you started off with just out of necessity, creating the album covers and things like that for it. And so then what happened next?
Yeah, so that band that I just talked about, the cover band that I was in, I always did the flyers and stuff for it, and it was always our flyers always stood out because we didn't do like the band photos where everybody's arms are crossed, and it's we never did stuff like that. We had fun with them. We did goofy ones, and so our flyers always stood out. and it kind of became this thing because we played at this one particular bar once a month. That was like always our spot. We played there once a month. And so everybody knew a couple of weeks before we played, we were going to put flyers up. And so everybody kind of started talking about them. Like, oh, what's it going to be? Like, are they going to do this? And like, we did a wrestling themed show every year, like around WrestleMania. We dressed up as wrestlers. Like, yeah, it was crazy. But I didn't realize it at the time, but I was learning about branding and marketing, because it's very, very hard to convince people to come see your band.
Right. Okay.
And I got really good at that, and I didn't realize it, but yeah, I was getting really good at branding and marketing and differentiation and all of this stuff. And so eventually I got to the point where I liked designing the flyers for the show more than I liked actually playing the show. And so I decided to stop playing for a little bit. And I was working like at a restaurant, like nothing. I did not have any like 6-figure jobs or some like corporate 9-to-5 where I made, $200,000 a year or something like that. Like I worked part-time in restaurants and in retail and shit. So it was just not, wasn't really going anywhere. So I decided that I would do some graphic design stuff on the side just to kind of make extra money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you started off just by yourself, freelancing, pirated copy of Photoshop. And then
I used for a long time.
Yeah. We don't have to disclose if you're still using it, but
no.
being on LimeWire, I'm sure there have been some upgrades since then. So you started off doing band posters. You created this anticipation simply because of the design. People were like, okay, what's happening next? What's the next cool thing coming out of this band? More than, I guess, what the next song is or what's the next cover they're doing. And so, you started doing this design. Did you move into doing more stuff for other bands, or what kind of work did you start working on?
So I started doing the lyric videos and like do you remember there was this very specific time on YouTube where the equalizer, like the waveform videos were super popular?
Right.
I figured out how to do those in After Effects. And so I was already in a bunch of groups with musicians. And I had DJ'd and stuff too. I was kind of in the electronic music world at the time too. And so it was like, just kind of a natural fit. Like, hey, if you've got a new song coming out, like shoot me $100 and I'll make, like one of these like cool equalizer videos. And all it was, like, I figured out very quickly, I could kind of templatize it. Like I could make it one time and then I could just change like certain stuff. And like,
right.
It went from like spending a couple of hours on these things. I could get one out in like 30 minutes. Right. On this shitty PC that I had at the time. This horrible computer that I had. So yeah, I figured that out really, really quick. And like as far as the band thing goes too, something that and I've talked about this on Twitter before. I might need to like pull the thread back up and like repost it because it is really good. But there were so many bands in the area. Like we had a ridiculous amount of live bands in the area that I lived in. I don't know what it is about that area that just produces musicians. I think it's because there's nothing else to do. And it's basically an open air prison. So everybody learns how to play an instrument.
Yeah.
Ridiculous amount of live music in this small little town. And so you kind of had to stand out, and everybody always tried to do no, we're the best. Like we're the most talented. And we didn't do that. We were like, we're okay. Like we're, but we played songs that nobody else played. Like nobody else was covering Taylor Swift.
Right.
And so it was different. It was like, we're not the most talented. Like we're pretty good, but
we have great posters.
Yeah, we have awesome posters, and we cover songs you've never heard.
Yeah.
Like, it was different enough,
Yeah, that made you interesting, and people followed along with your adventure and stuff. And so you graduated from doing the band posters, band videos. What came next for you?
Yeah, so I did that, and then I linked up. There was a guy that I had met on Facebook. He did websites. And he was like, he also did graphic design, but he was like, I can't really do both. Like, can you help me out with with graphic design? I was like, yeah, sure. And so I ended up doing that for him for a little bit. His business partner screwed him over, and they had a big falling out. And he was like, I kind of need a business partner all of a sudden. Like, are you interested? And I was like, sure, I guess. I'm like
What is that?
23,
Yeah.
maybe. Yeah. So I had no idea what I was getting myself into. But it gave me a good look into like how you operate with clients and that side of it that people don't talk about a lot, right? So like how do you onboard somebody, like project scope and stuff like that. And I just kind of threw myself into it like all of a sudden. And I got on YouTube and was watching as many videos as I could about, marketing and client processes and onboarding and stuff like that I had no idea about. So
It's amazing the kind of resources that people have these days
I
when it
know.
comes to learning anything. And then, of course, with AI, it makes it even easier to do the research and find the best of in thoughts and ideas and learning and training and all of that stuff. So when did you become a slayer of boring brands? When did that become a thing for you?
So that happened. This was a few years ago. When I started to realize that I didn't like the beige kind of super professional and branding like that because it doesn't work. Um, I wanted to do very different, a lot more bold, contrasted branding to whatever the industry was in. And so that's kind of where that came from. That and I'm a big video game nerd, and so that was where the Slayer thing came from. So
Yeah, yeah, and I want to talk about that a little bit because I love your story and the things that have happened that I've been following along, and how you incorporated that into some of the work that you're doing. So what makes a brand boring? What do you think? You mentioned the beigeness. What else makes a brand boring, and how do they solve that?
yeah, I think if you look at if you're a business owner and then you look at your competition, so everybody else that's in that industry or your area, if you're local or whatever that is, whatever your competition is, if you cannot distinguish either through the visuals, the tone of voice, the way that they message, anything like that, if you can't distinguish between you and the other like top 5 people in your industry, there's a pretty good chance you're falling into that category of boring. So,
So what are some
if
things?
I
Go ahead.
good.
Well, I was going to say, what are some things that a business can do to start creating that differentiation?
Yeah, so I know everybody says like when they zig, you zag, and that is generally good advice. But I see people go wrong with this a lot because they think, oh, I have to like disrupt this industry and we have to be bigger and badder and louder and stuff like that. It differentiation, in my opinion, is just another word for contrast, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
if everybody in your industry is big and loud and they're screaming about how awesome they are, the best possible thing that you could do is just whisper because it'll stand out. Like
Right.
you don't have to talk over them; it just has to be different. But where this also goes wrong is people think, oh, well, I just have to be different. And then they go off way in like left field doing whatever they
Right.
want.
Right.
And it doesn't work because there has to be some sort of strategy behind it. It's like, why are we doing it this way? Or like, where are we trying to beat our competitors? Where are we trying to be different? Where are we not trying to be different? Because there's some places where you don't want to, like with your, bookkeeping, don't differentiate that. There's probably a reason that that's like standard across the board.
Right.
So
Right.
you have to do it strategically, and you have to find where you can be different and beat your competition.
Right. Yeah. You don't want to have your moniker, we're creative accountants. It's like,
Right.
well,
It's like, how
yeah,
creative.
yeah, right. What does that mean? Is that code for something? Because
Mhm.
your industry shouldn't be creative. It should be have integrity. It should be truthful. It should be accurate. It should be detailed and all of that stuff. So, what are some examples that you feel industries, whether it's work that you've done or within an industry where you've seen those brands that have done a good job of not being boring and differentiating themselves or creating that
I think
contrast?
as of recently, I think Liquid Death is a really good example of this because I mean it's water. It's not interesting. And like I know they say it comes from like the Swiss Alps or whatever. It probably doesn't. It probably comes from some well in Colorado. See, there you go. It worked. But I'm on their like text message marketing. I'm on a lot of people's text message marketing and email marketing just so I can see it. Like I just study it. I usually don't buy anything, but yeah, their stuff's hilarious. But yeah, the story behind it's super cool because I think the guy that started it, like, I actually didn't know this, but a big part of the reason that it's in aluminum cans is because he cares about like plastic waste and the environment. I had no idea about that because they never talk about it.
Right.
Ever. They never mention that they're like an eco-friendly, like whatever. It's important to him. And so he was like, let's put it in metal cans instead of plastic bottles. But it acts as like a way to differentiate too, because you've never seen water in a can. And it almost looks like a beer can.
Right.
Like I've bought it before and been carrying it around. I had it at we had a 4th of July party and I had it. And everybody's like, are you drinking Miller Lite? And I'm like, no, it's water.
Right. And I think they've done a brilliant job of, and it's going to be hard not to use water-related language, but they entered a saturated market. They entered a market where everybody was producing water, and it wasn't just small companies. It wasn't the little LaCroix. It wasn't, the off-brand from Kroger's or whatever. Everybody was doing it. Nestle was doing it. Coke was doing it. Everybody's doing water. And so how do you enter a market that is flooded, with all these options and differentiate yourself and not be boring? And they did a brilliant job of saying, do you know what? Let's create a canned drink that people can order in a bar. They can, take to an event, and they don't feel like the boring person that, oh, you're a teetotaler or you're a water drinker while everybody else is on time, right? And so it looks like an energy drink. It looks like a hard liquor.
Well, and they use that language too, the whole like murder your thirst thing. Like it's not, you wouldn't get that from a, like Fiji or, one of the other like water brands. Yeah.
Right. They went all in on the name. They went all in on the brand. And stood out. And I love that you brought that up. And the reason I had that can so close is not because I drink it. It's just because it's always been a perfect example of a brand that slayed boredom. They came into an industry where they could have easily been just one of the many options, and they dominated until I can't even remember what they're worth. They're just worth some astronomical amount.
I think it was billions.
Yeah. And it's such a great story of a company that entered in and they listened to Haley and they said, let's slay boredom. Let's not be just
I did this.
Yeah. So this is one of Haley's projects, actually. No. But
I'm sure they have no idea who I am. No. Well, and the guy that started it, they got an idea, like it was backstage at Warped Tour. The guy was like, well, this would be cool. And it was just one of those like shower thoughts is what I call it. Like when you're in the shower and you get these crazy ideas. Like I love stuff that starts like that because it's 10 times out of 10, they're usually really, really good ideas if you follow through with them and you do them correctly.
Right. And that's kind of what I wanted to do with this podcast too, is the reason it's called Head Smack is the idea of an idea that you hear or a moment or something inspirational. You're like, oh man, that's so obvious. That's such a great idea. Let's act on it. Let's execute on it. Because ideas are worthless until you execute. You can
everybody has ideas.
Right. Everybody has ideas. Everybody comes up with the next big idea, but they just let it go. They don't execute on it. They don't take action. And so I've met, a recent client that saw a opportunity out of category of what they were doing. And they're like, I think that'd be a great idea. And within a short time, they were in 6 figures, because they just had an idea and they executed on it. So
it can work.
Think, yeah, absolutely. And so I think I'm so glad you brought that up as an example because they absolutely did enter a market and dominate it. And so if a client or if a company was, coming to you and they're in a market that is saturated, they're in a market that is full of people, where do you start with them? What are some of the things that you ask them, that you talk to them about, that you start wielding your tool of slaying weapons? And what are those weapons? What are those things that you pull out and start hacking at their ideas, their thinking, their plans?
Yeah. So really, I mean, the first thing that I start with is their customers or clients, right? Because that's, at the end of the day, that's who you're appealing to. That's what's most important. Because if you don't have anybody to sell to, you can make the coolest brand ever, and if nobody buys it, it's just kind of, it's there. It looks neat, but it's about it. So I always start there. And I like to think that I go a little bit deeper than most people do. I don't just do the demographics, which those have their place and that's cool and everything, but I really like to kind of figure out like the identity of the person that it is they're trying to appeal to, and then how do we make the brand identity enforce their identity. I said identity a lot, but that's the only way to describe it.
Yeah,
because that's what people buy really at the end of the day. With anything pretty much that they buy, is they're buying an identity. They're buying something that it says something about them when they purchase it. So
right.
I try to figure out like, okay, what it is subconsciously or consciously or in between, what is it that they're saying? So I start there with the target audience and stuff like that. Then I kind of look at the competition. So, okay, they're doing this. Why are they doing it like that? Are they doing it like that and it just happened to work? Can we do it differently? Like, can you beat them in these areas? Maybe like your customer service can be a whole lot better. And like we can use that as a point of differentiation. Or like maybe your return policy is better. Maybe your, this, and this are better. Like we can use all of those things to differentiate.
That's so good.
And then you kind of start to see like the core part of it start to come together. And it's like, okay, well, how do we talk to these? Which is what I spoke about earlier. It's like, how do we talk to these people? Like, are we big, bad, loud, brash? Like, are we kind of quiet? Is it professional? Is it this? Is it friendly? Is it humorous? Are you a goofy brand? And that's where you start to, you move into more of the tangible traits at that point. And then you get into visuals and stuff that you can actually see. So the core audience and the values and stuff like that isn't really stuff that you can see, but it's there.
Right. It's the foundational stuff. It's the stuff that is pretty important. I'm going to get a button where I can press wherever every time there's a head smack idea, because I think you shared a lot of really great value there in things that a business really needs to look at when it comes to who they are, who they're reaching, how they're reaching them. And I love what you said about the identity and how the audience associates with a brand, and it gives them part of their identity. You've got the Apple users, that
Apple's the best.
Yeah.
Like,
though Apple recently has, I think their fanboys, their tribe of fanboys has almost evaporated. I think it was a lot stronger when Steve
in the
Jobs
Jobs era.
Yeah, I think so. I think during the Jobs era, there was a lot more fandom of Apple because it seemed like Apple was very much into innovation as opposed to moving to a place of just iteration. It's bigger, it's smaller, it's got this camera, it's got more lenses.
Yeah, we crammed more megapixels in the 5-lens camera that we stuck on the back of this giant phone.
Right. And so honestly, I have an older phone. I'm usually like an early adopter. I jump in on stuff. I had the very, very first iPhone that came out. I had the very, very first iPad that came out. I bought both of those. And I was a fanboy, not a nerdy type of fanboy. Like I didn't get everything, but I loved the vibe. I loved the culture. I loved everything about it. And I think that, Apple, because they've moved into they've gone from being a Photoshop to being an Excel spreadsheet. They've gone from being creative, innovative, fresh to a place that it's sales and data and information, and they've created this engine that just keeps producing iterations of almost the same thing to the point that people, I've met a lot of people that don't care about the latest phone because it's almost like it's created for an audience they've forgotten. It's created for people that love the megapixels.
Yeah, well, I always go back to that because I'm not an Apple user and I never really have been. I know I might be the only creative in the world that uses a
I didn't
PC.
know that before I invited you to be a part. What?
I
I'm
am
not that crazy.
10 times faster on a PC than most people are on a Mac. I'd argue that. So just what I'm used to. But, you know, I love what Apple did from a branding point of view, and I love what Steve Jobs did. And I agree with you. I think they're just in this, they're trying to appeal to this tech-heavy crowd that are never going to buy. They're trying to appeal to people like me. I'm never going to buy an Apple product.
Yeah.
They're sitting here talking about like gigahertz and RAM and stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, I understand what all that means, which is why I'm not going to pay $1,500 for a phone when I can buy an Android for $400 that has the exact same specs. It's like, you're never going to win me over on that.
Right. They've stopped telling stories. They've just features. Here's a new feature. It's a better camera. It's got more space. The newest phone, you can attach an external hard drive to it, and it's like 99.9% of your users don't care about that. That's not a feature that really matters to them at all.
No, let me stick an SD card in it, like I've been able to do with my Android for 10 years.
Yeah. I think that they've stopped listening, and I think so that they've become in a way a little bit of a boring brand. And so if a brand becomes boring, what is your first step to, I know there's a way to launch to not be boring. But what about a brand?
Like a rebrand?
Yeah, that's kind of got into a place that sales aren't where they need to be. They're not getting the attention that they want.
I think in the case of Apple, it's kind of difficult because it was Steve Jobs. I think that led that charge. Because I'm lucky enough to know somebody that worked alongside Steve Jobs. And so I've heard some stories about how gung-ho he was. No, this is how we're doing it. And if you don't know how to do it, figure it out. Like, he was kind of an ass about it, but for good reason. And he had that vision, and he had that creative drive. Because I remember all of the old ads, like the Mac. I think it was not a MacBook, one of the iMacs, the original iMac ads. When they're talking about, it's like this Orwellian kind of,
right,
everybody's a clone. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah.
Super Bowl ad, the legendary.
Yeah, the Super Bowl ad. Those, and then of course his quote, like, you have it on your page actually about like, this is for the misfits, the rebels, that whole thing. So yeah, I think in the case of Apple, it's hard because you want to get back to that, but it's like you can't find another Steve Jobs. That's difficult to do.
Right.
Find somebody as close as you can, I guess, to Steve Jobs. Like, you need a job or an Elon or, somebody like that. Somebody that's going to push the creativity rather than let's see how much, how many more processors we can cram into this fucking thing. Because I feel like right now they're being led by somebody more akin to Steve Wozniak. Nothing against Woz, but, I think you got to find a personality and a leader that's more like Steve Jobs.
Right. Absolutely.
Somebody that's creative. So that's step number one. And then just go, but like, dance with the one that brought you there. Like, what, because they were a $1 trillion business at one point. Like, what got you there? It was that innovation and coming out with like brand new products. And I know they got Apple Vision and stuff like that. And that was hot for a couple of days, but at the same time, that's not really new.
Right. And it's gonna be something that only a certain amount of people can use, will use, want to use, can afford to use. And, even the social media, seeing them on trains doing stuff and walking down streets, it's like, you look like a dork. Like, really?
Yes.
That wasn't your best promotion and advertising of the vision. And
no.
So when it comes, so taking it, of course, Apple being a billion-dollar company is one thing. What about the local business, the chiropractor, the lawn guy that feels like they've got to a place where they're boring, nobody notices them? What would be the first kind of things that you would look at for them and say, here's what you need to do?
Yeah. So again, I mean, in a local business like that, where you're serving one specific area, like if it's lawn care, like HVAC or something like that, I would Google like plumbers near me. Look at the first 5 that come up. Like, what are they all doing? I guarantee all of their websites kind of look the same. I bet they have similar logos if they even have one. The messaging, the tone of voice, everything's probably the same. We're a professional, blah, blah, blah. We've been in business for this many years, and you can trust us. And it's all the same. Figure out where you want to be different. Like, where can you differentiate? Do you want to be, the landscaper that shows up? What is that? It's a junk removal thing. Oh God, I cannot remember the name of it. I think it's because it's a really long name. It's like college hunks doing something like junk removal or some shit like that.
Yeah.
Junk removal's not a glamorous thing, right? They have they employ like college kids and have them like go to people's houses shirtless and like remove junk, right? It's like these like buff college dudes that are trying to make extra money, but like that's a very specific kind, because I imagine the audience for that is older, like middle-aged women that don't have a job. But that's a very specific niche, and that's one way to do it. You can serve this very, very, very particular audience. But yeah, it's totally different than like your typical, because I imagine most of the people that do stuff like that do not look like, these very fit, in shape college dudes, if I had to guess.
Yeah.
So
with when it comes to branding has become, a big thing. Brand strategists seem to be popping up everywhere. Maybe not as much now as they've moved on to other things, other shiny objects. When it comes to branding, as you've evolved from the things that you did early on to what you do now, what was the biggest head smack moment when it came to branding and the strategy behind it?
I think, I don't know. I've had a lot. I think I would have probably incorporated marketing a little sooner because I didn't want to be known as a marketer because everybody was a marketer. And I'm like, no, I do branding. It's different.
Right.
And it is different. And I stand by that.
How do you distinguish the difference?
I think you have to have branding first. Branding is the long-term game. I think that's where, if you want to build, the Apple, the Nike, that level of brand, you have to start with branding. You have to start with brand strategy. I think it makes everything after it easier. If like, this is who we are, this is what we're doing, this is how we talk, this is who we speak to, this is why they buy things, it makes your marketing, your advertising, your copywriting, everything gets easier after that. It's a long-term game. You're gradually building trust with people to get them to buy into your brand. And that was all that I focused on for a long time. And it wasn't until very recently that I realized that marketing is the short term that you do need to actually generate revenue. Because I hated promoting myself. I didn't like talking about what it was that I did. And I looked at it as like a necessary evil because I'd seen the way that people did it. And it was so scummy, the way that some internet marketers were and still are. And they manipulate people and they just straight up lie or, they make false claims and stuff like that. And I didn't want to do that. And it wasn't until I had kind of went down this journey of like owning a business and doing this and serving clients that I realized like, no, it is something that you need, and you don't have to do it in a way that's, feels gross.
Right, right. I totally agree with you on that. I think with branding, and when you start from a place of strategy, it multiplies your dollars you're investing into drive attention to yourself, because the branding and the strategy and the consistency builds an equity in your brand that when you start putting it out there, you're everywhere consistent. And so people are seeing the same thing over and over. And I've seen a lot of businesses that don't have any strategy when it comes to their brand, and they're just putting stuff all over the place. Nothing looks the same. Everything's all over the place. The messaging, the audience, who they're trying to reach, the visuals, the colors, all of that stuff is very different from one place to another. And so everything's got to work on its own power. It's not using the equity of the brand building that happens when they're putting stuff out there. And so I agree with you on that, because it does make a huge difference to start at that place. And then when you start trying to drive attention to your offer or to your services, then it just works a lot better and a lot stronger. Your dollar goes a lot further. And so I want to transition to something else that you've been doing. You've had quite a awesome journey so far, but then I saw you do something really strange. You launched the SSDC. Tell me about how that came about, and tell me a little bit more about it. What does the name mean? How did you come up with that? And
Yeah,
how
so
has that attention been so far?
so I a couple of years ago I got really depressed, and I was just fed up with what I was doing, the work that I was doing. I didn't want to do it anymore, and I was like, should I even keep doing this? Should I get another job? Like, I was just in that, like,
Right.
we're not gonna make it stage that everybody gets
despair,
it. Yeah. And I was like, you know what? I'm just not gonna worry about this right now. I want to draw something. And I drew this little possum walking in the road. Don't know why, but that was what I did. I drew this possum, like, just walking down the road, and there's like a little sunset behind him. It's not like super complicated or anything. And I put the words "Rambling Man" on it, like on the top and bottom. And I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool.
What does that mean?
I don't know.
That's awesome.
I just thought it was neat. I was like, he's walking down the road. Who the fuck knows where he is? Like, he's just wherever. Yeah. So I think it was vaguely inspired by the Bob Seger song "Rainbow Gambling Man," because I ended up doing another one that was a gambling man that has like poker chips behind it and stuff. But I don't know. That's the only thing I can think. I really don't know. I just put it on there.
Well, what I love too, before you continue, is the fact that you started off by saying you used to draw, but you weren't that good at it, and now you've come full circle to where now you're drawing a lot more with what you're doing with the SSDC. So keep going. So the birth of the SSDC came out of the Valley of Despair with Possum and the Rambling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I sent it to a friend of mine. I was like, hey, I just did this. And he was like, that's really good. And I was like, oh, like, what do I do with it, though? He was like, fuck it, put it on a shirt. And I knew how to do, like, drop ship, print on demand stuff. And I was like, yeah, I could do that. I said, but I need a website. This is my web developer that I was talking about earlier.
Right.
Business partner. We ended up splitting just because I didn't want to fuck with websites anymore, but, clearly we were still friends. But so he's like, yeah, just he was like, find a domain name, I'll set it up. I was like, okay. And so I started thinking, I'm like, well, I said, I always thought it'd be cool to have something that ended in design company, like Design Co.
Right.
Like, so it has to end in Design Co. He was like, okay, well, like, do you want like design.co? And I was like, I don't know. I want it to be something Design Co. And I was like, wait a minute. That kind of works. So that's what SSDC stands for. It's something design company.
I absolutely love that. When I saw you do that, and then I saw your explanation of it, I thought that is so brilliant. Like, well done, Haley. Kudos to that.
Just,
that
why overthink
was
it?
amazing. Yeah, something.
I was like, it works. SSDC. I threw a logo together. Yeah. Like, Yeah, I've used the same logo for years. I used the same brand colors that I was using for the agency that I had at the time because it was easy, and I already had the hex codes memorized. So I was like, "Yep, screw it, here we go." That's that same yellow color.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of evolved now. It was just a little side project that I had that I could come back to, and any sort of ideas or like drawings or sketches or anything like that I had, that was somewhere I could get it out.
Right.
I don't care if anybody bought it. I don't care if anybody ever even like saw it. I just wanted it out of my head.
Yeah. It just became an outlet.
Yeah. And so I had it, and I recently moved it over to Shopify because I'm like, I probably could take this a little bit more seriously now that I know. And I thought it would be cool, since I work with a lot of e-commerce brands, it would be cool to have something that I could build in front of everybody. Like, no, I'm also figuring this out as I go, and like showing everybody kind of, how I approach it from a branding standpoint, from a marketing standpoint, and then some of the pitfalls that have happened, which happened recently.
Oh no.
There was a video game that came out called Helldivers 2, and it blew up, got crazy popular almost overnight. And it's a shooter. It's like a war game, kind of. Space Vietnam is what people refer to it as. And I got tagged in this post on Twitter. It was, those old like Vietnam vet hats that say Vietnam veteran. It has like the army ribbon in the middle.
Yep.
It was that, but it was a location from the game. And a friend of mine was like, "Could you put this on a hat?" And I was like, "Yeah, I could put it on a hat. Like, give me 10 minutes." So I design it really quick. I make up a ribbon because I don't want to use like an actual army ribbon, right? So I just make it up, just do like random colors and stuff. Throw it on my website. I put it on a hat. I get it mocked up. I'm like, "Hey, here it is. Like, here's the link. I'm going to the gym." I figured maybe 10, 15 people would buy it, some silly hat like him and his buddies. I go to the gym. I get about halfway through my workout, and I noticed that my smartwatch has so many notifications that it has stopped alerting me. I'm like, well, that's weird. That's never happened before.
Yeah.
I checked my store, and I had like 400 orders. I was like, oh my God. Like, I don't think I have the money in my account to fulfill them.
So you had moved away from direct-to-press or direct-to-t-shirt, direct-to-garment printing at that point.
No, I'm still like print on demand.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still print on demand. But the way that it works is, so somebody sends me money, they buy it through Shopify. Shopify has my money. The printer is linked to my bank account. I send the printer money from my bank, and then Shopify pays me out later.
Okay.
Which is fine when you only make like 30 orders a month, which is what I had been doing.
Yeah.
I threw a couple of grand in that account. I'm like, whatever, it'll run forever. Like, I'll never need any more than that.
Right.
It did like $38,000 in sales in 7 days. I had to argue with Shopify. They were holding my money. They were like, "No, this is fraud." And I'm like, "No, you don't understand. It's not." Like, it was a mess.
You away too. You don't get it. Yeah.
I'm like, "No, you don't understand." And I explained to them. I was like, "No, listen. I had a tweet that went viral with a product that went viral. I was not prepared for this at all. I have like $2,500 in this account because it's literally more than I have ever needed."
Yeah.
I'm like, "You guys are holding," I think it was like $25,000 was my next payout, and they wouldn't give it to me. And I'm like, "No, you don't understand. I have got orders that I have got to fulfill. I do not have the money to fulfill it because you guys are holding the money. Like, I need you guys to release it." Like, we finally got it figured out. I had to send emails to people. It was a learning experience. Yeah, I went and applied for an American Express card after that for emergencies because I maxed out the other 2 cards that I have.
Oh man,
dealing with this. Yeah, it was. Oh my God, it was crazy.
That is so crazy. So how many sales have you made up to this point? Like you said, 400. Is it gone up or could it like hit it?
Oh, it was when the dust settled. It was almost 1,000 orders. It was 900 and some orders. Yeah.
Well, and what I love with what you've done with SSDC, and then you know out of a time of the valley of despair. And, a lot of creatives go through those times. It seems to be part of our wiring that we just kind of hit some of these points sometimes. Sometimes they last for a few hours, sometimes a day, sometimes a few days. Sometimes it takes a little longer to just get out of that spot. And I think part of that is just hope. I think part of it is chemicals. I mean, we recently, Elon Musk with his interview with Don Lemon, talked about needing medication for when he hits those valleys of despair, that it's a chemical thing. He has no control of it. And so the fact that, you hit that place in your life where you were kind of down and out, and you said, you know what, all I know how to do is create. And so I'm just going to create and kind of go back to my roots of doodling, of scribbling, of drawing. And then that became something that, created this next iteration of your life, this next iteration of what you do. And I love that you've also found a way, because, we haven't talked about your gaming. I know you're a pretty passionate gamer. You've found a way to merge those two loves, your love for design, your love for creativity, and your love for gaming. So that's amazing. And I think that's sometimes where people, when they find that way to combine two passions and two loves, it's amazing to see what could develop from that. Now, with the work that you're doing for SSDC, is a lot of it around gaming? Is it like you mentioned, just stuff that pops in your head?
It's both. One of the things that I said with it was it's whatever I want it to be. I'm not doing brand guidelines. I'm not doing tone of voice guidelines. I'm not doing, like, this is how we run ads. This is the target audience. I don't care. It's for me. If other people like it and they want to buy it, cool.
So
at the end of the day, it's for me.
You tell your clients not to do.
Basically. Yeah.
You know what? And that's the
but
thing.
But this is also not this is not my main business, and this is not something that's like I have to get this much money from it a month or I'm not going to eat. It's not that either.
Right.
Yeah,
though you can eat a lot better now that you've sold 900.
Wasn't mad about that. Wasn't mad about that.
Yeah, that wasn't.
Seeing a $25,000 deposit in your bank account for 20 minutes worth of work was, that was pretty cool.
Good.
So,
Feels good.
That was not profit. Before somebody comes at me, they're like, "Oh, but with his fees," it wasn't profit. That was just the payout. But yeah,
right. And so, and I think, I think understanding branding, and here's where a lot of brand people, design people, creative people, they want to break the rules before they understand the rules. And I think that's where you get into trouble. There's a design trend. It's not as big now as it was, but called brutalism, where it just feels like designs and creative stuff created in Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, old school computer, just very brutalistic. Just very. It made a lot of designers like wince, like, oh, that's so ugly, But it was people that understood the rules breaking them them in a way that got attention and was just
things like that.
And
I did some brutalist stuff.
Yeah, and I've tried doing it, and I think I did more of it in my early days of a designer. There was also a little bit of that with textures and layering and all of that with Photoshop. But understanding those rules and then breaking them effectively can add a level of differentiation and not being boring. And so I think with what you've done is the rules of branding, the rules of design, all of that stuff. You mentioned you're a self-taught designer. You haven't gone to school with it. You've just learned some stuff from doing stuff well and finding success in that. But then just breaking it and saying, do you know what? This is a passion project, and I'm just going to do what I want to do because I know if I create parameters around it and if I create rules around
I'll hate it.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll hate it.
Yeah. And I love that you've done that. I love that you've allowed yourself to do that and not being so in your head about branding and brand strategy. And am I a hypocrite? I'm telling clients they need to do this, but I'm not doing it. That you're like, do you know what? There are times when it's okay to be scrappy. It's okay to be raw. It's okay to be unfiltered. It's okay to do stuff like that.
Definitely. Definitely. And I'm glad that I got to experience that so that when inevitably my clients go through it, I'm like, no, look, I've been here. This is how you do it. Like, this is how you deal. So,
Yeah. And so what's next for Haley?
so I have um something kind of stupid maybe that I'm gonna do or crazy. I'm not sure what. Um I had this idea a couple of years ago and I didn't get to do it then. I had some like medical stuff pop up and so it kind of like I had to put my life on hold for a little bit and just didn't get back around to it. Um I am going to buy a sprinter van or a cargo van and I'm going to renovate it. I'm going to live out of it and
Right.
I'm going to have it custom wrapped with this new thing. I'll tell you here in a second. But I'm going to have it custom wrapped and what I want to do is I want to, instead of being on a wait list, which is typically how you would, like build scarcity and stuff like that. Instead of, oh, it's this many months out or it's this many weeks out or whatever, it's going to be dependent on where I am in the country.
Oh, right.
So I want to work with people in person and just to kind of explain my thinking behind this. I see where AI is going and I don't like it. And I don't like that people don't see it. And so I have been preaching for the last 2 years, like, no, you need in-person experiences. You need human-to-human connection. I'm telling you right now, the brands that do this will prosper because of it. Like, it's not easy to do right now, and I know AI is the easy way out because it'll do so much of the work for you, but I'm telling you right now, it will water down your brand, and it will kill you. I know a lot of people don't have that opinion about AI. They're like, no, if you don't learn how to use it, blah, blah, blah. I'm not learning how to use it. I don't care. I don't want to have anything to do with it. I'm going the complete opposite direction. Like, I want to sit down with clients in person. I want to see the things that they see every day. I want to eat at the restaurants that they eat at. I want to meet their friends. I want to see the colors that they see every day. I want to learn how they talk. And then I want to help them build a brand. So I'm going to be traveling around the country in this van, and I'm going to do that for clients in person.
Haley, that is awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
That is so that is so cool. I love it. And so right now you're based out, where are you based out of now?
Tennessee.
Tennessee. And so you're going to
Northeast Tennessee.
all over the country, all over the United States.
Yep. The lower 48. Can't drive to Hawaii, obviously, but and I don't think Canada would let me in. Yeah, you could, and maybe, and I do plan on doing a YouTube channel for it too and documenting it, just because I think it would be fun. So, yeah, because I think it's I don't know of any brand strategist that's ever done this. Like,
I think it's fantastic.
If anybody knows, please tell me. But I really don't think that there is. I've looked very hard into this. There's plenty of people that do the van life thing, but I don't think anybody's actually done it as like a traveling business.
Right.
So
I love it. And I think that's a great way to differentiate yourself. I think you're absolutely right. Everybody's so like gung-ho into AI. They're so passionate about it. They're so interested and they're so fascinated. AI really is kind of a really pretty snake. It's got a lot of...
I want to be clear too, like just to interrupt really quick. There's things about it I understand why it's cool. Like as a gamer, do you not fucking think that I think it's neat that like NPCs could potentially be almost player level real in video games and like the amount of immersion that would add? That's awesome. I'm all for the development of the technology. I'm just not going to use it in what I do because I think that it's bad.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you've brought up the point of the human interaction. I think there is a place where businesses can actually excel and differentiate themselves from that human engagement. Trying to in an era where getting a real human on the phone from a company is so difficult, where having some sort of a personal experience is so difficult. And some people have incorporated that into storefronts and things like that, where, getting a real person that's knowledgeable of what they're doing to talk to them face to face, is difficult. And so I love that you're doing that as a brand, where that is part of what you're about. If I'm going to be doing a project for you, I want to shake your hand. I want to look you in the eye. I want to share, a coffee with you and get to know you a little better. And you're working with me directly, as opposed to you're working with somebody that you'll never see or you'll never be in contact.
Uh-huh. Well, and I feel like that's what's been missing from it too, because there's so many times where people are like, they're trying to explain to you what they want through an email chain. And it's impossible to figure it out that way. Like, I don't care how good you are. It's hard to see what the other person's seeing and be in their shoes on a fucking Zoom call. Like, it's just hard to do. So I'm like, I'm going to do the van thing anyway, because I want to. Like I said, this was an idea that I had years ago. And then I've kind of figured out, but I'm like, I still have to work, like I still have to make money, obviously. So I'm like, how can I do that and still survive, provide for myself, and my dog. I'm taking my dog with me because she's too big to live anywhere else. So yeah, I mean, I thought, I think it'll be cool. So
now you mentioned the wrap. What are you doing with the wrap?
Oh yeah, so I want to custom wrap the outside of it. So I'm gonna call it the Brand Wild, which it was just called Brand Wild, but I couldn't find the domain for it, so I've added the in the front of it. Eventually I bought the domain the other day. I haven't made a website for it yet, but I'll do that. I'm hoping to get it on the road this summer, so hopefully by then I'll be done. But that'll kind of it'll also advertise for it, and like I thought probably for social media it'd be good too, because it's a very specific looking thing, so I could take pictures of like the different locations and stuff that I'm in.
Yeah,
it's not just a white cargo van like most people have. Like,
right,
of course, it's got to be different.
yeah, absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. I love that. This has been so good. I've enjoyed hearing about your adventure. I'm proud of you and all that you're doing. You're doing some fun stuff. You're pursuing your passions. You're doing some fun, creative work. You're helping a lot of people. And I love this new adventure that you're on. I'm definitely going to be following along and
thank you.
Seeing how things are going. And so if somebody wants to get a hold of you, who do you want to help? Who's going to be your best type of client, and how do they reach you?
Yeah, I work mainly with people that sell physical products. I do work with service-based industries every now and then, just depends on what it is. So, if you're in one of those spaces and you want that kind of, like a Liquid Death or a, not Apple, as we discussed. Apple and Nike used to be like, that was what everybody said. That was what they wanted. And like now I don't hear that ever. I don't hear like Apple.
Yeah,
Nike
what's the last
anymore.
Apple ad that you actually remember?
The Super Bowl one from the 90s.
right.
Talked about.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you want that kind of, bold, sort of in your face, like differentiated, I used to call myself a professional enabler, because I would get clients all the time that are like, but can I do that with my brand? I'm like, fuck yeah, you can do whatever you want. Like, do it.
Just encourage them. Just do it. Yeah.
Basically, yeah. If you need that, and then you're also like in e-commerce or you sell physical products or something like that, that's typically who I work best with. So,
well, I love the success that you're having. I hope that you continue with that, and look forward to even more great success. Thank you for being on. This has been awesome. We went a little longer than planned, and I'm totally cool with it.
It's all good with me.
Absolutely loved it. And people, what's your website? How do they get a hold of you?
So right now it's HaleyShane.com, HaleyShane.com.
Right.
I will have thebrandwild.com up. It is not up yet.
Yeah, and I'll put that stuff in the show notes. If you've enjoyed this, be sure to rate and review it on Apple Podcasts, like and share it as well. And if you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And more Head Smacks coming along. Be sure to subscribe in Apple, as well as all the other platforms I'm going to be trying to put this on, and also follow along on social media as I post bits and pieces of this as well. Love for you guys to share it. And thank you once again, Haley. This has been awesome. And you have an amazing day.
Thanks. You too.
Thank you for joining us on the Head Smack podcast. We've shared some candid stories and life-changing ideas. And now it's your time to act. First, take bold action on just one idea and see how your life can radically change. Secondly, whatever platform you're listening to this on, please rate it, share it, and leave a comment. Let us know where this episode impacted you. I appreciate you giving me your time, and don't forget to join us for our next Misfit conversation.